Tama used to be a valiant knight who met his end at the hands of the demons. However, after his death, he was reborn into the body of an S-Rank Behemoth, a creature so powerful it could obliterate entire nations in an instant, or at least that's what his status screen claims. In reality, he merely appears as a cat. While Tama is grateful for this second chance at life, he feels a bit torn about his new form as a monster, especially considering his previous life was entirely dedicated to slaying monsters. At that moment, he spots an E-rank slime slowly approaching him, and it's clear that the creature intends to eat him. Reacting quickly, he revisits the status screen to select a skill for self-defense. He unlocks an ability that allows him to fire rocks from his mouth and uses it to defeat the slime. Once the threat is eliminated, he realizes he hasn't eaten anything since his reincarnation, so he decides to give the slime a try. To his surprise, it tastes surprisingly good, and as an extra benefit, he discovers he can absorb the skills of monsters he consumes. This leads to him unlocking the ability to store items. After that, Tama decides to go through the rest of the dungeon to see what else he can eat. Since he's an S-rank, none of the other monsters really stand a chance against him. Tama proceeds to slay all kinds of minotaurs, golems, and snakes to feed on them. And so far, his life as a cat hasn't been so bad. He could get used to living like this. At the same time, a very well-endowed elf girl has just arrived at the dungeon entrance to begin her day of adventuring. Back with Tama, he's still busy exploring his new home when he comes across a treasure chest in the middle of the room. He's really excited since this is the first time he has ever seen a treasure chest in person, so he rushes to open it and finds a massive gem inside. Unfortunately, the treasure chest turned out to be a trap, but instead of being a mimic, it teleports him into a hidden boss room. Tama finds himself riding on the back of an earth dragon, and unlike the other monsters he's faced so far, this one is also S-rank like him, meaning he won't be able to take it down in a single blow like the others. The earth dragon taunts Tama for daring to enter her lair, declaring that she's going to kill him. However, Tama has only been alive for an hour, and he's not about to let himself be taken out so easily. He tries using his rock attack, but because the earth dragon is, well, made of earth, the attack harmlessly bounces off her back and strikes the roof, leaving a small hole. The dragon retaliates with a slash, but Tama counters it by activating his iron body skill to shield himself. Although Tama manages to withstand the slash, the attack leaves him seriously injured. The dragon, impressed that he's still alive after enduring one of her strikes, acknowledges his resilience but notes that he remains too weak to defeat her. She charges forward, intending to finish him off. At the last moment, however, Tama activates a flight skill and uses his tail to slash out the dragon's eye before escaping through the hole in the ceiling. Tama is losing a lot of blood from his injuries, so he's trying to get out of the dungeon to find a safe place to rest before he ends up passing out. He's right next to the exit, but he eventually succumbs to the blood loss and collapses to the ground. Just then, he notices something approaching from around the corner, and since he can't move anymore, whatever that thing is will definitely be able to kill him once he is spotted. Luckily for him, it was the elf girl who came around the corner. As soon as she saw the near-lifeless body of a cat, she rushed over to help him. Tama wakes up a few hours later to find himself lying in bed with his wounds carefully bandaged. Feeling disoriented, he wonders where he might be, but his confusion is interrupted when an elf girl enters the room holding a bowl of milk for him. He recalls catching a glimpse of her just before passing out and can't help but marvel at her beauty. The elf girl is visibly relieved to see Tama awake, noting that his injuries were quite severe. She admits she has no idea how a little kitten like him could have ended up in the middle of a dungeon. Tama quickly realizes that she believes he's just an ordinary cat rather than the powerful behemoth he truly is. Since he can't speak, there's no way to explain the truth. But even if he could, why would he ruin the arrangement when it means getting to sleep on her chest every night? Over the next few weeks, the elf girl continues to take care of Tama until he has fully recovered from his wounds. One day, Arya heads out as usual, and while she's gone, Tama thinks about how grateful he is for what she has done for him. She not only nursed him back to health, but she also gave him food to eat and let him sleep in her bed. In order to pay her back for her kindness, Tama swears that no matter what happens, he's going to make sure he protects that girl with his life. To ensure her safety, Tama decides to follow Aria into the dungeon so he can keep an eye on her. He sneaks onto the boat before it leaves. Once they get to the dungeon, he begins quietly following Aria while staying hidden. He's a bit worried that she might get herself into some kind of weird situation, like losing her clothes to a slime or something, so he prepares himself to jump in at the first sign of trouble. As Aria encounters a group of goblins, she swiftly activates her acceleration skill, cutting them down with ease. Once the fight is over, she kneels to collect their ears, intending to claim the reward later. Watching her in action, Tama is thoroughly impressed. With his past experience as a knight, he knows a great deal about swordsmanship and can easily recognize just how incredible Aria's speed and technique are. As Aria finishes stowing the goblin ears, she spots another goblin peering at her from behind a corner. Instinctively, she assumes her battle stance. She's already killed enough goblins to meet her quota for the day, but if this one insists on attacking, she's ready to take it down too. What she doesn't realize, however, is that this goblin isn't ordinary, it's a goblin mage. Without warning, it hurls a massive fireball in her direction. Caught off guard and unprepared to handle such an attack, Aria finds herself in serious trouble. Tama doesn't want to let her get hurt, but he can't use any of his overpowered skills without revealing that he's a monster. Instead, he pushes Aria out of the way and slashes the goblin mage with his regular kitty paws, causing it to stumble backward and fall down the dungeon stairs to its doom. Aria doesn't understand why or how Tama managed to get here, but she's grateful that he saved her. On the ride back to town, she lets him lay on her triple Ds while she tickles his belly, and Tama is absolutely loving it. After returning to town, Aria heads straight to the Adventurers Guild to submit the goblin ears she collected. As she approaches the reception desk, she is intercepted by Lord Casman. Though she has encountered him before, she had been trying to steer clear of him because of his persistent attempts to recruit her into his party. Aria tries to politely decline his offer, fully aware of Casman's sleazy nature, but he refuses to accept her rejection. As if to push his luck, he reaches out to grab both of her cheeks. Before his hands can make contact, Tama springs into action, biting down hard on Casman's hand and refusing to let go. Casman yells in pain, flailing wildly in an attempt to shake Tama loose. When he finally manages to dislodge the furious kitten, Tama lands directly on Casman's face and unleashes a flurry of scratches before leaping back onto Aria's chest, leaving Casman thoroughly humiliated. Casman is enraged and is about to draw his sword to attack Tama, but before he could take a swing, his sword is grabbed by the guild master, Arnold. Arnold reminds Casman that the guild has rules against brandishing weapons, especially when it's for a reason as pathetic as beefing with a cat. So there are going to be major consequences for him if he continues. Casman doesn't want to mess with Arnold, so he immediately runs out the door. Aria begins thanking Arnold for helping her out. He tells her it's no big deal and compliments Tama for sticking up for Aria when he bit Casman's hand. Aria then heads to the reception desk, and Arnold documents all monster parts to officially complete Aria's quest. Afterwards, Aria takes a seat at one of the tables, so she can spend some quality time with Tama. Up to this point, everything has been fairly wholesome, but Aria is starting to exhibit some odd behavior. While she's tickling Tama's stomach, her finger begins to stray dangerously close to his balls, and she seems a bit too thrilled about the idea of tickling her cat's private area. Shortly after, Aria prepares to take a bath and decides to bring Tama along with her. However, Tama, being a former knight with his honor to uphold, refuses to engage in something as improper as joining her in the women's bath. Despite his protests, Tama ultimately finds himself in the bath with Aria. While they're there, Aria starts talking about her aspiration to become stronger. She shares how, years ago, demons nearly wiped out her village, but the sword Saint Alicia arrived just in time, defeating the demons and saving everyone. Since then, Aria has been determined to grow strong like Alicia. The next day, Aria is heading to the guild with Tama again, and Tama can tell that she's well liked by everyone in town since they are all so nice to her. She makes it to the guild and greets Arnold at the reception desk, but Arnold tells her that today isn't a good day to be here, so she should get out of here quickly. Unfortunately, before Aria could follow Arnold's advice, Casman shows up and proudly announces that after he got injured by her cat, cat, he went and tattled to the Baron. As a result, he was given a special order saying that Aria's pet cat is to be put down. Aria is in utter disbelief at what she's hearing. Although she hasn't had Tama for very long, he's incredibly precious to her, and the thought of him being killed is unbearable. She drops to her knees, pleading with Kazman to show mercy. Sensing her desperation, Kazman decides to exploit the situation to his advantage. He suggests they have a duel. If Aria wins, Tama's life will be spared, but if Kazman wins, she must agree to become his wife. The deal is blatantly unfair, especially since Kazman holds a higher rank than Aria. But with Tama's life on the line, Aria has no choice but to accept the terms. The duel begins, and Kazman kicks her in the side. After she stumbles, he compliments Aria on her speed, but says that it won't be enough for her to beat him. Aria tries to switch tactics and throws several daggers at him, but Kazman has a knife-proof cape, so he is easily able to block. He then charges at Aria and begins putting pressure on her by repeatedly striking with his sword until he eventually disarms her. Now, all hope is pretty much lost for Aria since she can no longer defend herself. Tama is feeling deeply torn at this moment. If he doesn't do anything, Aria will be forced into marrying Kazman. However, if he uses any of his abilities, the onlookers will realize he's actually a monster. As Kazman moves in to deliver the final strike and make Aria surrender, Tama decides he can't stand by any longer. He leaps in to protect Aria, activating his iron body skill to shatter Kazman's blade. Immediately after, Tama unleashes a powerful howl skill, sending Kazman hurtling into a cluster of nearby trees. By sheer coincidence, Kazman's sword is flung in the same direction aimed directly at his balls, ensuring he's about to have an extremely unpleasant experience. After what just happened, everyone in the crowd begins murmuring amongst themselves because they know they just saw the cat use skills. Tama knew this would happen, and now that everyone has seen him use skills, it won't be long before they figure out that he's a monster. He knows he'll definitely be killed, but even so, he's satisfied with this outcome because he at least managed to defend Aria. Aria and Arnold approach Tama, and after witnessing him use his skills, they begin discussing what he might actually be. Rather than concluding that Tama is a monster, they are convinced that he must be an elemental cat. Arnold announces Aria as the winner, and everything returns to normal, allowing Tama to carry on his life as an overpowered cat with the coziest bed imaginable. The next morning, Aria tries to coax Tama out of bed by cuddling him, but the mischievous kitten playfully nibbles on her ear, leaving her completely flustered and blushing uncontrollably. Remembering his past life as an honorable knight, Tama quickly decides to stop before the situation becomes even more awkward. He leaps off the bed to walk away, but Aria keeps calling after him, her tone full of longing, which only makes things even more uncomfortable for Tama. Later, Aria brings Tama to the blacksmith shop to visit her friend Vulcan. As soon as they arrive, Vulcan's attention is immediately captured by Tama, her eyes fixed on the adorable kitten. While Aria shares stories about Tama, Vulcan eagerly asks if she can hold him. Tama seems delighted as Vulcan picks him up, marveling at his cuteness. However, Aria quickly redirects the conversation to the purpose of their visit. She needs Vulcan to craft armor for Tama. Vulcan is thrilled by the idea. Excited to take on such a unique and charming project, she immediately starts taking Tama's measurements, assuring Aria that she'll create the perfect armor for him. As Vulcan gets busy with her work, Aria leans down to whisper to Tama, asking if he's ready for an adventure. Without hesitation, Tama eagerly agrees. While Aria and Tama make their plans, Vulcan is laser focused on crafting the armor, treating the task like it's her life's mission. In just under 10 minutes, Vulcan proudly presents the completed armor, and it turns out to be a masterpiece. Tama looks dashing in it, and the fit is perfect. However, Vulcan admits she's still struggling with another issue: Aria's sword. Despite reforging it over 100 times, she hasn't been able to make it any lighter, which makes it difficult for Aria to wield effectively during her quests. After some thought, Vulcan suggests forming a temporary party. This way, she can observe Aria in action, watching how she swings the sword to better understand the problem and find a solution. That day, the team dives into the dungeon, where Vulcan quickly demonstrates her strength, smashing through the hideous goblins they encounter. Aria watches in awe, completely captivated by Vulcan's boldness and incredible power. While Tama admires her as both fearless and highly skilled, Vulcan's expertise is further demonstrated when she deflects a fireball attack from one of the monsters using a special ability linked to her smithing talents. She explains that her power allows her to imbue her armor with various elemental attributes, making her highly adaptable in battle. With the path now clear, Vulcan steps aside and urges Aria to take the lead with her sword. Their next challenge is an unsightly, oversized orc. The creature's grotesque appearance is both repulsive and intimidating, but Aria charges in regardless. Activating her acceleration skill, she attempts to land a strike, but the orc proves to be surprisingly agile, expertly blocking her attacks. Tama then steps in, soaring through the air and activating his iron body technique to shield Aria from an incoming blow. Distracting the orc just long enough, seizing the moment, Aria strikes and eliminates the beast in a single decisive attack. Vulcan observes Aria's movements closely and notices her long sword hinders her flow in battle, making her strikes less effective. Unhappy with her performance, Aria turns to Vulcan and requests an even tougher challenge, eager to push her boundaries and become stronger. Impressed by her determination, Vulcan encourages her to proceed to the next floor, promising even more formidable trials ahead. As they descend further, the group finds themselves facing a swarm of slimy, lecherous ropers rather than the usual massive beasts. Tama immediately grows nervous, worried that these slimy creatures will ensnare his mistress with their writhing tendrils. He quickly warns Aria to stay alert and avoid their sticky grips at all costs. Aria charges in with acceleration, but the ropers' speed makes them tough opponents. Her strikes fail to connect with their bodies, and one of the ropers shatters her heavy sword, leaving her defenseless. Just as she's about to be snared, Vulcan hurls a knife toward her. Aria catches it midair and swiftly drives it into the roper's core, killing it in one precise motion. With newfound resolve, Aria shifts her focus and moves to take down the next slime. As Vulcan watches her fighting style closely, she quickly realizes that Aria's true strength lies in using shorter, lighter weapons rather than her heavy longsword. In a matter of moments, Aria slices through the monster's limbs with incredible speed and precision, leaving Vulcan utterly speechless. Though she always knew Aria was talented, Vulcan hadn't anticipated this level of swiftness and effectiveness in dispatching the second monster. Just as they begin to think the fight is over, the slime splashes its goo all over Aria, completely drenching her from head to toe while regrowing its limbs. Cringing in disgust and fury, Aria growls that only Tama is allowed to do something like that to her. Fueled by her outrage, she obliterates the creature in a single devastating move. This time, she cuts it into so many pieces that there's no chance of it regenerating. Vulcan and Tama rush to congratulate her on her incredible display of skill. While Vulcan moves closer to offer praise, Tama, being the cheeky little kitten he is, stops halfway to steal a bit of juice from the dead monster to absorb its skill for his own use. Still fuming, Aria unleashes her frustration on the remnants of the roper that dared to drench her in its disgusting goo. She furiously stabs its already destroyed body over and over, muttering vengeful thoughts under her breath, while Tama watches in silent bewilderment, wondering if she might be taking things a bit too far. After her rampage, Aria opens up to Vulcan and shares the story behind her choice to wield longswords. She recounts meeting the Sword Saint during her childhood, a figure who became her idol and inspired her to take up the weapon. Even though the longsword doesn't naturally suit her fighting style, Aria devoted years to mastering it in an effort to follow in her hero's footsteps. However, with her recent realization that daggers complement her skills far better, she has decided to embrace this newfound strength. Tama listens attentively and offers his support, reassuring her that this change will only make her stronger. Recognizing Aria's growth, Vulcan suggests venturing to a deeper floor of the dungeon, trusting in Aria's ability to handle the challenges with her daggers. Before pressing on, they decide to rest near a Philosopher's Stone, a rare artifact that keeps monsters at bay within its vicinity. As they take a break, Aria finds herself staring at the stone, which unexpectedly triggers a flood of painful memories from her childhood when her home was attacked by demons. Lost in thought, Aria barely notices Vulcan's concerned look. When Vulcan gently asks if something is wrong, Aria brushes it off, quickly changing the subject and steering the conversation elsewhere. While the group takes a break, Tama splashes around in a pool of water, carefree and enjoying himself. Seeing him having so much fun, Aria decides to join in, removing her plot armor and giving Tama a clear view of what's beneath. Vulcan soon joins, and the three take a refreshing dip together. However, as Tama swims, he tries hard to focus on anything but their exposed skin. During their break, Aria casually asks Vulcan about her usual dungeon party, unknowingly bringing up a sensitive topic. Vulcan explains that her party disbanded after 2 members fell in love, and the female adventurer became pregnant. The couple decided to leave their adventuring life behind and settle down. The conversation then takes an unexpected turn when Vulcan mentions that elemental cats like Tama are capable of crossbreeding, speculating about what might happen if Tama grows larger and enters a serious heat season. As their break ends, the group heads to the next dungeon floor, where they encounter a fierce minotaur. Unlike the goblins and ropers from earlier, this creature is a formidable opponent. Aria approaches carefully, accelerating toward the beast and executing her whirlwind-slash technique. However, her attack barely scratches the minotaur's thick hide, leaving her shaken. Vulcan steps in, offering encouragement and helping Aria regain her composure. Motivated by Vulcan's encouragement, Aria regains her focus and unleashes a series of faster, more aggressive attacks. Overwhelmed by her speed, the Minotaur begins swinging its massive weapon recklessly. One of its wild swings hits the ceiling, causing chunks of debris to fall dangerously close to Vulcan. Acting swiftly, Tama uses his howling skill to deflect the falling rubble, saving Vulcan just in time. Inspired by Tama's quick thinking and courage, Aria spots an opening and delivers a devastating strike straight to the Minotaur's chest, taking the beast down once and for all. As Tama cheers for Aria's hard-earned victory, Vulcan stands in awe, marveling at the little cat's strength and courage. Her thoughts wander as she can't help but think that Tama is a really powerful alpha male. Back at the Adventurers Guild, Aria, Vulcan, and Tama turn in the loot they gathered during their dungeon raid. They then approach Arnold, who inspects the deep cut marks on the Minotaur remains and asks who was responsible for dealing such impressive damage. With a proud smile, Vulcan explains that the marks were the result of Aria's newly refined skills. Arnold, remembering how much weaker Aria had been when she first arrived in town, praises her for her remarkable growth and dedication. Blushing at the compliment, Aria thanks Arnold, feeling a deep sense of pride and accomplishment. With their earnings in hand, the trio heads to a local restaurant to celebrate their successful adventure. At the restaurant, Vulcan wastes no time indulging in heavy refills, impressing Tama, who can't help but wonder if she's a seasoned drinker. Aria takes the opportunity to express her gratitude to Vulcan for her support during the raid, admitting how much fun she had working together. Vulcan shares the same sentiments, showing off a rare medicinal herb she collected in the dungeon as a memento. Their lively conversation stirs a sense of nostalgia in Tama, reminding him of his past life as an adventurer, when he had comrades to share such moments with. Even so, Tama admits to himself that his current life isn't bad at all. Being the spoiled pet of a stunning elf is a dream few would decline. As their bond deepens, Vulcan proposes that they form an official party. Caught off guard, Aria is flattered but too shy to respond. Noticing her hesitation, Tama playfully nibbles her hand and places it on top of Vulcan's, sealing the agreement on her behalf. The group bursts into cheers, celebrating the beginning of their new partnership. Fueled by their growing partnership, they decide to order more drinks and turn the evening into an unforgettable celebration. Later that night, Tama finds himself squished between Aria and Vulcan's metaphorical plot armor. The snug and awkward situation makes it nearly impossible for him to sleep, especially when he hears Aria muttering in her sleep about hoping Tama doesn't get too rough. Feeling both suspicious and mildly flustered, he somehow manages to keep his composure. In need of a distraction, Tama checks his stats and is startled to discover he's eligible for evolution. However, evolving might turn him into a massive behemoth, potentially putting an end to the life he currently shares with Aria and Vulcan. Prioritizing loyalty and companionship over raw power, Tama resolves to stay as their beloved and dependable pet. The next morning, while strolling through town, Aria and Tama come across two thugs harassing a young girl, accusing her of being a pickpocket. Aria wastes no time stepping in, and as soon as the thugs catch sight of her elemental cat, they flee to avoid any trouble. Aria consoles the girl, discovering that she's an orphan, and takes her to a local church where nuns care for other children. Listening to Aria's heartfelt discussion with the nuns, Tama feels a deep sense of admiration for his master's kindness, and silently vows to support her even more than ever. That evening, Arnold summons Aria to the Adventurers Guild to congratulate her on her promotion to C rank. As a token of recognition for her hard work, he presents her with a gleaming new rank pendant. However, their celebration is cut short by a commotion near the quest board. Arnold explains that people have been disappearing in Leonard, a nearby town, and rumors suggest that demons may be involved. Upon hearing this, Aria's determination sharpens. Fueled by her deep-seated grudge against demons, she eagerly asks for more details and declares her intention to take on the emergency quest without a moment's hesitation. After hearing the details of the case, Aria pressed Arnold relentlessly for every piece of information she had. Vulcan felt uneasy watching the elf's eagerness to take charge, doubting whether she was truly up to the task. However, Aria's resolve remained firm. She was determined to act swiftly to prevent more people from becoming victims. Impressed by her determination, Vulcan offered his assistance, and Arnold remarked that it wouldn't be surprising if a mercenary company soon decided to recruit the two of them. Just then, a young man wearing a tunic entered the guild. Introducing himself as Cedric, he was immediately recognized by the adventurers as the Duke's eldest son, renowned for his expertise in managing labyrinths. Cedric greeted Vulcan warmly and assured both her and Aria that they would soon stand together in battle. Tama then recalled Cedric from the legendary war known as Ragnarok, where humanity waged a desperate fight against demons. Although the losses were catastrophic, victory was ultimately secured thanks to a prodigious boy, the Grand Mage who led them to triumph and became a legendary hero. Amid the excitement, Aria expressed concern that their group was too small to face such overwhelming threats. Arnold, clearly charmed by Cedric, reassured her, insisting that Cedric's abilities were enough to astonish anyone. As Aria affectionately clung to him, Arnold reminded her that such gestures should be kept private. Curious, Aria asked if they were a couple, and Vulcan confirmed it, leaving Tama completely baffled. Remaining silent until they returned home, Tama couldn't help but notice his master's unease. It was understandable, given the dangers of traveling with someone as legendary as the hero. The cat Tama licked the elf's face, seemingly trying to comfort her, and she responded with a kiss. Surprised by the affectionate exchange, Tama quickly refocused as the group prepared to set out on their journey. Along the way, they met new allies, the silver-haired swordsman Danny, the humanoid monster Howard, the fiery red-headed Kenny, and the cheerful Marietta. Aria introduced Tama, who immediately charmed everyone with his undeniable cuteness. Marietta even insisted on taking turns carrying him. Their peaceful journey was suddenly interrupted when a group of orcs blocked the road. Cedric calmly instructed Danny to deal with the threat, and the swordsman dispatched the orcs effortlessly, without breaking a sweat. Vulcan, intrigued by Danny's abilities, inquired about his fighting style, and Kenny confirmed that Danny hadn't even used any skills. Aria began to understand just how powerful the heroes of Ragnarok were, while Tama was in awe of Danny's raw strength, eager to one day fight alongside him. As night fell, they arrived at Leonard Village, where the grateful villagers warmly welcomed Cedric and his team. One villager shared troubling news. Many locals had mysteriously disappeared, including a search party lost in the ruins and another girl who had been abducted the previous night. The revelation stirred painful memories for Aria, reminding her of the invasion that had devastated her homeland. The village leader then explained that Cedric's knights were the villagers' last hope. Noticing the group's exhaustion from their travels. The villagers quickly prepared a hearty meal to help them recover. Later, as they settled into their lodging, Aria's curiosity got the better of her, and she asked why each of her companions had chosen to become knights. Danny revealed that his family's poverty had forced him to join in order to repay their debts, while Howard shared a similar story of hardship. Kenny explained that she needed money to buy medicine for her ailing sister, and Marietta said she sought freedom for her father, who had been enslaved. Listening to these heartfelt stories, Tama couldn't help but sense the sorrow hidden behind their motivations. Even Aria began to regret asking the question, feeling the weight of their struggles. The knight, however, felt no shame in their choices. They had faced their struggles, paid their dues, and were now forging their own paths. Cedric's reason for joining, though, was entirely different. He admitted he had no interest in love or family obligations. As the Duke's son, he joined the order not out of duty, but because he lacked a greater purpose and found enjoyment in slaying monsters. While his blunt honesty didn't sit well with everyone, no one voiced any objections. After dinner, it was time for everyone to bathe. While the girls enjoyed a relaxing soak, the boys, driven by youthful mischief, attempted to sneak a peek. Tama, ever watchful, caught them in the act. With a booming shout, he sent Danny and Howard scrambling back to their quarters. Thoroughly embarrassed, Cedric observed their hurried retreat with mild amusement, quietly pondering their excitement for the journey, a feeling he couldn't entirely share. Once the group was refreshed, they pressed on, venturing deeper into the foreboding labyrinth. Unbeknownst to them, a malevolent creature was silently stalking their every move. To this hidden predator, the adventurers were nothing more than prey, watched closely as it gathered its strength and prepared to execute its deadly plans. Before long, their progress was halted by a pack of werewolves blocking their path. Howard, acting as the tank, stepped forward with his massive shield, taunting the wolves to draw their attention and create an opening for his companions to strike. Cedric demonstrated his unparalleled swordsmanship with flawless precision, while Aria dove into the battle, determined to prove herself. Tama, noticing the armored werewolves, briefly considered unleashing a powerful roar, but instead chose a water-based attack. With perfect aim, he struck one werewolf down and swiftly eliminated two more, leaving his party in awe of his skill. Meanwhile, the hidden monster, observing from the shadows, was taken aback by how quickly his wolves had been defeated, especially by Tama, whose command of elemental power was unexpected. Despite their impressive strength, the monster knew he couldn't allow these intruders to advance further. Resolving to escalate the situation, he prepared to intervene, whether by unleashing more weapons or stepping in himself. Back with the heroes, everyone was shocked by the elemental cat's abilities. Aria, utterly captivated, openly expressed her admiration, even suggesting she wouldn't mind being subdued by Tama's strength. He found her words peculiar, but Tama resisted his animal instincts, reminding himself that Aria was still his master. They soon arrived at a chamber filled with an oppressive, crushing atmosphere, so Cedric raised his hand, halting the group. Then, from the shadows, emerged Beryl Astaroth, the labyrinth's master. He declared that their journey would end here, revealing himself as a surviving demon seeking vengeance for his fallen king. Danny immediately accused Beryl of targeting Leonard Village out of revenge, but the demon dismissed the claim with a sinister grin, explaining that the town was merely the beginning of a much larger scheme. Without hesitation, he summoned a group of trolls to attack. Realizing the threat, Cedric quickly ordered the team to split up. But Beryl had anticipated this move and conjured a barrier that isolated Tama from the rest of the group. As a troll charged at Tama, he fought back fiercely, managing to tear off its arm, to his frustration. However, the severed limb regenerated almost instantly. Meanwhile, Cedric's team found themselves surrounded by enemies, leaving them with no choice but to place their hopes in Cedric's leadership to guide them to safety. Cedric unsheathed his blade, which began to pulse with dark magic, and with a wicked laugh, he charged at two trolls, slicing them apart so thoroughly they couldn't regenerate, removing them from the battlefield entirely. Beryl's eyes widened as he recognized the forbidden magic Cedric wielded, an ability used only by the great mage during the Ragnarok War. Cedric smirked with amusement because this was going to be so fun for him. Meanwhile, Tama attempted a stone war attack, but the trolls barely flinched, and their wounds healed instantly. Realizing the danger, Tama retreated, his mind racing as he considered whether to evolve into his stronger form. However, evolving would mean breaking his bond with Area, a sacrifice Tama refused to make. Resolute in his choice to stay by her side, he unleashed Flame Roar, scorching the trolls and preventing their wounds from regenerating. His daring tactic succeeded, and the trolls collapsed in defeat. Enraged by the relentless attack, Beryl prepared for the next confrontation. Vulcan charged forward with his massive hammer, swinging it powerfully, but Beryl skillfully dodged and deflected Area's knife strike with his dagger. Smirking, Beryl mocked the hammer's slow and predictable movements. However, he was caught off guard when Vulcan suddenly kicked up a cloud of dust, temporarily blinding him. Seizing the opportunity, Area darted forward and drove her blade into Beryl's chest. At first, he dismissed the wound as trivial, but then light radiated from the elf's enchanted dagger, amplifying the damage and forcing him to his knees. Snarling in pain, Beryl struck back with his dagger, delivering a vicious wound to Area far more than a simple cut. The group rushed to her side, panic setting in as Tama feared the weapon might be poisoned. Meanwhile, Beryl, still alive, smirked darkly and declared that humanity would crumble when true power returned. Then, with those ominous words, his body began to petrify, turning to stone before crumbling into dust. Meanwhile, the poison rapidly spread through Area's arm. Cedric examined the wound with a grim expression, identifying it as dragon venom, a lethal toxin. Howard pressed her arm against his enchanted shield, hoping to slow the poison's progress, while the group hurried back to Leonard Village. Upon their arrival, the village doctor confirmed their fears. Dragon venom was invariably fatal within a day and a half, and survival was impossible without the eye of an earth dragon. Desperate to save Area, the group debated the idea of hunting the beast, but Cedric adamantly objected, insisting there wasn't enough time. As Area's pain grew unbearable, Tama, consumed by guilt and despair, leapt out the window and took off. Memories of Area saving his life overwhelmed Tama, and he made a solemn vow to repay her kindness, no matter the cost. Determined, he raced to the ruins where he had been reborn as an elemental cat, ready to confront the Earth Dragon, the same beast he had fought before and barely escaped. The dragon, surprised to see Tama return, sneered and taunted him for fleeing during their last encounter. But this time, Tama didn't falter. Deep down, he understood that his current strength wasn't enough to win. With no other options, Tama made a life-altering choice. He decided to evolve into a full behemoth, unleashing his ultimate power to save Area. Tama, now towering in his massive form, unleashes a torrent of flames, roaring furiously at the dragon below. However, the beast is far too quick, lunging forward with incredible speed, spewing her own blaze of fire before clamping her scorching jaws around Tama's throat. Tama's pupils tremble in agony, yet this was all part of his carefully orchestrated plan. He had anticipated that the dragon, overconfident in her attack, would leave herself vulnerable. As she bites down, Tama retaliates by snapping his flame-coated tail into her eye, bursting it like a fragile water balloon. The dragon collapses in defeat, but the victory comes at a cost. Tama's mana is completely drained, reverting him to his small, fluffy form. There's no time to lament his diminished state, as the dragon eye must be delivered to his master. Without hesitation, he tucks the dragon eye into his inventory, spreads his bat-like wings, and takes flight to bring it to Area. Back at their home, Area lies bandaged and struggling to cling to life. Vulcan stays by her side, his eyes brimming with tears, while the rest of the group observes the heartbreaking scene in hushed silence. Suddenly, a loud thud outside breaks the tension, startling everyone. Cedric and Danny rush out to discover the Earth Dragon's lifeless body, and a tiny, battered Tama sprawled on top of it, covered in blood and utterly drained. Cedric quickly declares that there's no time for explanations, instructing everyone to grab the dragon eye and focus on saving Area immediately. As the group scrambles to act, Tama quietly prays for Area, unaware that she remains ensnared in a harrowing nightmare. In her dream, Area finds herself surrounded by flames as her village is reduced to ruins, torn apart by destruction. At just 13 years old, her home was attacked by demons searching for the Philosopher's Stone, slaughtering everyone in their path without mercy. In the chaos, we see young Area trembling with fear, trying to flee but accidentally crossing paths with the demons. Paralyzed by terror, she could only shake uncontrollably. Just as all hope seemed seemed lost. An elemental cat, strikingly similar to Tama, appeared out of nowhere and saved her life. Suddenly, Aria jolts awake, the vivid memory of her past still sharp in her mind. At that moment, she realizes why she has always felt such a deep affection for cats. Her gaze falls on Tama, curled up peacefully beside her, and a profound sense of gratitude washes over her. The next morning, everyone is relieved and overjoyed to see Aria looking noticeably better. Arnold, overwhelmed by emotion, begins sobbing uncontrollably. Although she's no longer in immediate danger, traces of the toxin still remain in her system, requiring Aria to spend the next few days in recovery to fully heal. Later that evening, Tama ventures into the forest alone, seeking out monsters to test his growing abilities. Since his clash with the Earth Dragon, he's been wrestling with the mechanics of his evolutionary forms. While his colossal form seems to have vanished, he's discovered that he gained new powers from the dragon. Spotting a towering minotaur in the distance, Tama seizes the opportunity to try out his newly acquired Dragon Claw and Dragon Fang. With swift, devastating precision, he takes down the monster in seconds, astonished by the sheer power he now wields. Suddenly, the faint sound of footsteps catches Tama's ear. Emerging from the shadows is a maiden, her torn clothing and elegant features creating a stark contrast with the unnerving aura she exudes. What's peculiar is how she speaks to Tama directly, referring to him as the strong one, almost as if she's familiar with him. Even more unsettling, she swiftly snatches one of Tama's armor pieces, as though she's been tracking him. The woman then questions why Tama is in his furball form, her curiosity quickly escalating into a frenzied obsession. She begins chasing him, shouting about his strong body and trying to grab him. Terrified, Tama lets out a screech and darts toward a tiny hole, barely evading her outstretched hands. Her erratic and deranged behavior leaves him utterly shaken. While he manages to escape, he then returns to Aria, who is peacefully asleep, and curls into her arms for comfort, still shaken by the encounter. As he drifts off, Tama can't shake the eerie feeling that the crazy woman seems familiar. The following day, Aria dresses Tama in an adorable linen outfit adorned with frills, making him look irresistibly cute. The two then head out for a picnic, where Aria lays out a delightful spread of treats and hands Tama some berries to snack on. As they enjoy the peaceful moment, Aria brings up the Earth Dragon, reminiscing about how they had found Tama bloodied and exhausted beside its lifeless body. She then begins to share more about her past, asking Tama if he remembers the stories she had told him before. Aria recounts the harrowing attack on her village, Lumines, when demons had invaded, and how an elemental cat had come to her rescue. The village's salvation ultimately came from the Sword Saint, who single-handedly vanquished the demons. On that day, young Aria had made a solemn vow to become a strong warrior, leaving her mother and family behind with the promise that she would return even stronger. However, Aria's voice trembles as she admits she feels like she's always being saved, whether by Vulcan, Cedric's party, or Tama himself. Tears then form in her eyes as she confesses that, despite her vow to protect her comrades and her people, it feels like she's the one constantly needing protection. Tama quickly jumps to his feet, comforting Aria as she wipes her tears. She understands what he's trying to tell her, that she shouldn't feel down because, after all, she defeated Beryl herself and deserves some credit. Later, Aria and Tama pay a visit to Vulcan, who reveals that the armor Aria had commissioned is finally ready. Aria had amassed a small fortune as a reward for defeating Beryl and supplemented it by selling the loot from the trolls that Tama had taken down. She had invested the entire amount into purchasing top-notch armor. Although it came at a steep price, Vulcan reassures her that her safety is worth every coin. The new armor is both stylish and functional, and Aria's excitement is palpable. She bounces around joyfully, thrilled by how lightweight and comfortable it feels. Vulcan begins explaining the intricate details of the armor's craftsmanship, but Tama remains silent, simply admiring how impressive his master looks in her new battle attire. The three of them then decide to take a trip and test the armor in action. As they enter a tunnel, the atmosphere is tense because it's been some time since Aria has ventured into such a place. Tama jumps off her shoulder and uses his Lion King's blessing to grant her and Vulcan resistance sets to fire and ice, a gesture that makes Arya gush over how adorable he is. Soon, the group encounters an ogre, and Arya doesn't hesitate. She charges forward with blinding speed, surprising even Vulcan because she didn't even use her skill. With one precise blow, she beheads the creature, leaving it no chance to counterattack. Arya celebrates her success, praising the armor and her sharp moon knives. Their moment of joy is abruptly cut short when Tama freezes, his instincts picking up on a disturbing presence nearby. From the shadows emerges the unsettling woman, muttering cryptically about destiny and her mission to find Tama. Confused, Arya asks if she's a lost adventurer from ruin, but the woman dismisses the idea, claiming she knows nothing of such a place. Instead, she declares herself a being born of darkness, reaching out toward Tama with a desperate intensity. Vulcan speculates that she might be suffering from amnesia, but her behavior only becomes stranger. Her rambling turns more erratic, spilling secrets best left unspoken. Before stunning everyone with an outrageous demand, she insists that Tama must impregnate her. Arya remains calm and waves her off, firmly stating that Tama is just a little kitten. Tama, horrified, hides in Arya's arms for safety. Seeing this, the woman gets further enraged and accuses Arya of taming Tama and stealing him away. Despite the bizarre interaction, Arya remains compassionate and invites the woman to join their group, believing it's safer than leaving her alone where she might end up as a slave or worse. Arya reassures Tama that he will be protected, and the woman reluctantly agrees, seeing this as her best chance to stay close to Tama. On the way back, they decide to give the wild woman a name. Though she shows little interest, Arya points to a star and suggests the name Stella, explaining that it means beautiful in her homeland. Even Tama seems to approve, and the woman eventually agrees to be called Stella. Once they return home, the challenging task of washing Stella begins. Impatient, she repeatedly asks how long it will take, but Arya remains determined to scrub her thoroughly. When the bath is finally over, Stella feels refreshed and delighted, jumping around and marveling at the peculiar stone used to clean her. Vulcan corrects her, explaining that it's called soap. Overcome with excitement, Stella dives into the pool with a cannonball and splashes around like an exuberant child. Arya then calls Tama over to wash his little feet. Seeing this, Stella gets jealous. She yells that it's not fair and demands to wash Tama herself, but Arya calmly turns her down, saying only she, as his owner, has that privilege. Later that night, Tama wakes up to Stella telepathically calling him. He sees her creepily staring at him. To his shock, they're communicating through their minds. Stella reminds him of how he slaughtered her, confusing Tama until she mentions the labyrinth. That's when he realizes she is the reincarnated Earth Dragon. Stella explains that she was born from darkness, gifted with S-Rank abilities that made her untouchable by other creatures until Tama defeated her by destroying her eye. After her defeat, she was reborn and reincarnated, much like Tama, but this time as a frail and tattered maiden. In the final moments of her past life, she made a vow to seek out Tama in her next life, and she wasted no time in fulfilling that promise. Tama listens nervously, his posture tense and hunched. As he processes her story, hesitantly, he asks if she has returned to take revenge, but Stella reveals that her intentions are far more sinister. Stella then calmly proclaims that she has completely surrendered to him and has no desire for battle. Instead, she confesses her true intention. All she wants is his baby kitties to reproduce, leaving Tama utterly horrified. She passionately declares that he is the only strong male she has ever encountered and admits that she has fallen hopelessly in love with him. Suddenly, without warning, Stella lunges at Tama, her intentions unmistakable. However, Arya intervenes just in time, pulling Tama to safety and leaving Stella trembling in a corner, consumed with shame. Arya firmly scolds Stella, warning her to stay away from Tama, before calmly turning and heading back to bed. As Tama tries to relax, he can still hear Stella's eerie muttering in the shadows, vowing that she will eventually find a way to get to him. The next morning, Arya invited Stella to breakfast, tasting real food for the very first time. Stella momentarily lost herself in pure bliss before quickly regaining her composure and engaging in another internal conversation with Tama. After finishing their meal, Arya decided to take Stella on a stroll through town, hoping that the sights might trigger some of the memories Stella claimed to have forgotten. However, the only thing Stella could remember was the image of Tama leaping into her golden gloves, which she insisted persisted was the only mystery she truly cared about solving. This made Tama realize that, in Stella's perspective, Aria was the stronger of the two. Aria then suggested that Stella consider becoming an adventurer as a way to find purpose. To help her prepare, she brought Stella to Vulcan's shop to address her plot cannons. Both Aria and Vulcan were slightly doubtful about Stella's choice of an outfit that looked like something out of an online catalog. But Stella was thrilled with how the snug fit kept her melons secure and comfortable. Afterward, Aria focused on finding the right weapon for Stella. However, Stella dismissed the need for concern by demonstrating her half-dragon abilities, revealing that she still retained a great deal of strength from her past life. The group experimented with various weapons until Stella decided on a massive shield designed for giants. When Tama curiously asked why she hadn't chosen a sword, Stella explained that her defeat against him had taught her the value of prioritizing defense. Feeling satisfied, she paired the shield with a sword for balance, and the group proceeded into the dungeon to test her new gear, with Aria assigning Tama to keep a close watch on her during the battle. Before Vulcan could come up with a proper plan, Stella rushed ahead and stumbled upon 3 goblins casually enjoying a meal. The startled goblins immediately went on the offensive, prompting Aria and Vulcan to yell for Stella to fall back and regroup with Tama. However, Stella paid no attention to their warnings. She dropped her shield and sword, unleashing her dragon claws to kill 2 of the goblins in an instant. The 3rd goblin attempted a desperate counterattack from behind, but Stella snatched up her sword mid-swing and obliterated the creature with a single, decisive strike. Aria and Vulcan were left utterly frozen in shock, completely paralyzed by what they had just witnessed. Meanwhile, Tama quietly noted that Stella still retained the same extraordinary abilities she had in her previous life. With no goblins left to oppose her, Stella grew increasingly irritated, proclaiming her desire for stronger opponents. The group decided to venture further into the dungeon and eventually came across 2 orcs. Wasting no time, Stella hurled the first orc against the wall with a thunderous impact. The second orc hesitated, clearly realizing it had made a grave mistake by attacking, but it was already too late. Stella swiftly dispatched it, leaving the corridor soaked in the remains of her enemies. Encouraged by her display of power, the group pressed even deeper into the dungeon until they reached a section infested with a roper slime. However, before Aria could issue a warning, Stella recklessly charged straight into battle. Stella's confidence faltered the moment the slime's tentacles wrapped around her, sending an uncomfortable shiver down her spine. Tama quickly pointed out the dangers of underestimating such creatures, warning her it might cost her life if she got caught again. Provoked by this, Stella recklessly launched another attack, only for the slime to counter by grabbing her sword and drenching her in sticky love juices. The unexpected assault caused Stella to lose her composure, prompting Aria and Vulcan to rush in to rescue her. Meanwhile, Tama noticed that Stella's erratic behavior seemed to be linked to her dragon instinct. Using one of his own tentacle skills, Tama restrained both the girls and the slime before unleashing a powerful water blast that obliterated the slime, putting an end to the chaos caused by the creature. After regaining her composure, Stella felt deeply humiliated by her earlier display of weakness. Tama, however, offered her gentle words of reassurance, pledging to protect her from any harm in the future. This heartfelt promise once again ignited Stella's dragon instincts, causing her body to produce an overwhelming amount of dragon slime. Determined to learn from her missteps, Stella decided to accept Vulcan's guidance, making a firm vow to grow stronger and prove herself as a valuable member of the team. Their conversation brought back memories of the adventurers she had once defeated in her previous life, and she vividly recalled how powerful they had become when they worked as a team. The thought of reaching that same level of strength now filled her with renewed excitement and unwavering determination. At that moment, Aria became overwhelmed by her own intrusive thoughts. She turned to Tama and passionately pleaded with him to use his tentacle skill on her plot cannons. Tama was left utterly speechless, unable to grasp the sheer absurdity of her request. Before he could even begin to process the situation, Aria started shedding her armor with wild abandon. Thankfully, Vulcan stepped in just in time, successfully restraining Aria before the situation could escalate any further. Shortly after, the group resumed their journey deeper into the dungeon, eagerly seeking their next unfortunate target. After some discussion, the group took a moment to plan Stella's role in their coordinated tactics. With her immense strength and durability, they decided she would take on the position of the team's vanguard, serving as both a shield and an enforcer. It wasn't long before they came across a group of orcs. Stella stepped forward without hesitation, raising her shield to draw the creature's attacks. One particularly aggressive orc charged recklessly at her, but Stella countered with a single, precise blow that severed its arm. As she closed in to deliver the finishing strike, the wounded orc, now consumed by fear, turned and bolted like a terrified pig, refusing to let it escape. Stella immediately gave chase, driven by unwavering determination. At the same time, Tama activated his enchanted enhancement ability to amplify Area and Vulcan's magical prowess, unintentionally fueling Area's already growing fixation on his eggplant. Together, they obliterated every remaining creature that dared to cross their path until they stumbled upon a tranquil dungeon bath. Without hesitation, the group decided to take a break and relax. What followed was pure chaos for Tama, as he struggled to maintain control of his inner thoughts, while the girls shamelessly flaunted their melons, testing the limits of his self-restraint. The situation took an even more dramatic turn when Area, completely unapologetic, pulled Tama onto her chest, insisting it was the perfect spot for him to unwind. Not willing to back down, Stella pressed her dragon melons against Area's, sparking a heated rivalry over who truly deserved Tama's attention. Convinced beyond a doubt that Area was beneath her, Stella boldly proclaimed that she could treasure Tama far more than Area ever could. Naturally, Area wasn't about to concede, and their fiery disagreement escalated rapidly. Vulcan, stuck in the middle of the turmoil, tried to intervene by proposing a compromise, suggesting that Stella take the role of Tama's junior wife. However, this suggestion only added fuel to the fire, intensifying their argument even further. As the tension between them peaked, the sheer force of their clashing melons sent Tama hurtling straight into the ceiling, leaving him to question every decision that had brought him to this absurd moment. Later, the group made their way back to the guild to introduce Stella to Arnold. However, before they could officially register her as an adventurer, Arnold introduced them to a man named Lays, who had an unusual request. Lays explained that he was preparing for a long journey and required a capable team to safeguard a highly valuable item. When Area curiously asked about the nature of this item, Lays declined to discuss it in public. Instead, he led them to a secure storage facility, where he unveiled the mysterious object in question, Stella's own dragon carcass. The revelation left her utterly stunned. Watch this next video on screen and subscribe to not miss next part.